These children do not need these medical procedures as children to be able to flourish as adults.
In just the last couple of years, there's been a wave of rhetoric and new laws targeting the lives and care for trans youth.
Tennessee families with kids who identify as trans are facing some really tough decisions right now.
The district could become the first in the state to implement a controversial gender reporting policy.
This is a forced outing policy.
CBS Reports sent 3 CBS News correspondents to 3 key states of a nation in transition.
We were constantly living under the threat, and we had to leave.
I mean, they're not listening to medical experts. It's just infuriating.
To explore the impact on youth and their communities.
Does it ever get old seeing pride flags here?
No.
And examine the difficult conversations rippling across the country.
They feel that you're pushing them back into the closet by doing this.
They're not getting them the right kind of help. And I think that's very dangerous.
I wish that it was a world where, we could just be like, hey, I'm trans, and not having that be a big deal.
These are students who are just trying to exist and thrive and go about their lives like every other student is. I love making friendship bracelets with the traditional thread method. I'm kind of a homebody, so anything that allows me to stay around my house and just spend time with my family, I really enjoy.
Max Ibarra is a transgender high school student who identifies as non-binary. They live an hour's drive east of Los Angeles.
Can you talk about where you go to school?
No, I can't for safety reasons.
Does that bug you?
Yeah, it does. I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to be worried about my safety in the place that I live for existing as the person that I am, but it's what I have to do.
I think a lot of people watching this will be surprised. This is supposedly liberal California, a very blue state. That's not your experience where you're growing up.
Oh, it's definitely not my experience. I think that gives people a false sense of security.
On a state level, California has passed several laws protecting the rights of transgender people. But in towns across the state, communities are debating policies that target them.
A large crowd getting ready to pack a Chino Valley Unified School Board meeting. The district could become the first in the state to implement a controversial gender reporting policy.
The school board, governing the nearly 36 schools and 26,000 plus students in the district, passed the parental notification policy in July of 2023. It requires staff to alert a student's parents in 6 scenarios, including if the student is injured on school property or communicates suicidal intent. But it also requires staff to tell parents if the student requests a change to their name, pronouns, or use of sex-segregated facilities and programs that do not align with their assigned sex at birth.
Me as a school board member,
Inspired by similar legislation introduced at the state level that never made it to a vote, Sonia Shaw, the president of the school board, introduced the policy.
parents right now don't feel like they can trust the school district, and I wanted to give parents a voice back at the table and start letting them know, hey, don't exit out of public schools. We have a mass exodus. Let's bring families back in. Let's build the trust.
So you look at the parental notification policy as a way to open up dialogue.
Absolutely.
Since the policy passed 4-1 in Chino Valley, at least 6 other California school districts adopted something similar. But it has sparked tense debate at school board meetings.
I support this policy to notify parents because there is no good reason to keep secrets from parents.
These policies rob families of the opportunity to build trust with one another and support LGBTQ youth coming out on their own terms.
It is essential to recognize that parents are the primary caregivers and educators of their children.
This policy threatens my safety. That is what tells me I don't belong. A yes vote paints blood on your hands, and it's disgusting that even...
This is a forced outing policy. This is a policy that directly targets trans kids. That was its purpose when it was made. It slams them back in the closet at school. For many trans kids who have unsupportive households, being out at school and in the closet at home is the safest option. And what this policy does is it eliminates a child's safest option. Their safety shouldn't be sacrificed for some parents' feelings.
What about parents who say, it is my right to know what's happening with my child?
I have 3 kids, and these people who are screaming about parent rights are not about parent rights. They're about control. And they're telling me how I should parent.
Christy Hurst is a former teacher and current parent in the district. She co-founded the nonprofit Our Schools USA, an education policy advocacy group.
Here are excerpts from the dozens of letters I've received from students, parents, and teachers and community members outraged by this board.
When this policy was enacted this summer, what did you think?
I have had students come to me and tell me how they're scared to go to school, telling me that, or can they be reported from last year? It's heavy, I feel. It's heavy, and it's concerning.
In 2022, only 4 in 10 transgender and gender nonconforming youth were out to all of their parents or guardians. Of those who reported their parents don't refer to them with the correct pronouns or names, the majority screened positive for anxiety or depression. More than a third of LGBTQ+ youth report their parents taunt or mock them for their identity.
One of the highest risk groups for becoming homeless as a teen would be trans youth who do not feel safe in the home. They do not feel welcome. And we know that's associated with a higher risk of suicide in this population.
There's a lot of people who say you are putting children at risk.
The policy was very clear. It was when a child said, by my peers, I want to be called this, that, the other, or have an action item of wanting to join the opposite sport. It wasn't like a kid went to a counselor and said, hey, I'm struggling with this. And then we made a phone call and said, hey, Mrs. Smith, your child's struggling with gender identity. It doesn't say anything about the child experiencing any kind of thoughts of being the opposite gender. And I think that's where people don't read the policy.
After this policy was enacted, we partnered with the Rainbow Youth Project USA to make a hotline for kids that are impacted. They got 56 points of contact from calls just from Chino in the first week.
According to Hearst nonprofit, the hotline prevented at least 1 transgender student in the district from taking their own life as a result of the policy.
What if kids do end up killing themselves? How will you feel?
These secret policies are pushing kids into the closet. They're keeping them in the closet.
They feel that you're pushing them back into the closet by doing this, and they're scared.
So you're going to keep them in a closet and tell them, don't tell your mom, you got to keep quiet. I think whoever's telling them that is wrong. They're not getting them the right kind of help. And I think that's very dangerous. If those children are unsafe, we're mandated reporters are going to make sure that we get them to safety. We're not going to put any child in danger knowing that they're in danger.
What about parents who say, look, the school calls me when my kid has a sore throat. The school calls me when my kid gets hurt playing sports. I want the school to call me if my kid's going to change their name.
This is not an injury. We also don't call you if we see them holding hands with somebody. We also don't call you if we overhear that they're pregnant. Schools are not a reporting system for social issues. Every other kid at that school has the right to be independent socially, except transgender or gender nonconforming students. They are not allowed that right.
Being trans isn't a bad thing. Saying that we have to have some notification about trans students just existing is itself saying that being trans is this not normal thing that is worthy of having this response of alert. You know, these are students who are just trying to exist and thrive and go about their lives like every other student is.
In October of 2023, in response to a lawsuit filed by the state of California, a judge blocked 2/3 of the policy targeting transgender students on the grounds that it discriminated against them.
Where do you go from here?
If you ask me, obviously our community has been pushing for us to challenge it, and I hope we do.
Well, at the center of a heated debate this morning at the Tennessee State Capitol, gender-affirming care for minors.
Tennessee families with kids who identify as trans are facing some really tough decisions right now.
LGBTQ advocates across Tennessee are calling it legal turmoil.
"15-year-old LW asked us not to use her full name. She's a sophomore in high school.
loves video games, and is thinking about becoming a pilot one day.
I came out as trans when I was 12? Mm-hmm. And then I, socially transitioned. It took a little while for us to talk to people. When I was 13, I started puberty blockers, and that definitely helped a lot.
I think she was dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety over all these feelings that she was having that she didn't understand 100%. I think, we were surprised, but we were trying to figure out how to support our kid.
LW and her parents met with a specialist before she began taking those puberty blockers.
The beautiful thing about puberty blockers is that it's a pause button. So, we took our time from the time that she came out to when we started puberty blockers, but they were just a godsend in that way that we could stop and not have to worry about those secondary sex characteristics coming on.
When I look into the mirror, I see myself now. In the past, it was just sort of just some guy staring back at me.
But now that reflection is you.
Yeah.
These children do not need these medical procedures as children to be able to flourish as adults.
I-7716 names. Bob, next bill,
In February of 2023, the Tennessee legislature passed a bill outlawing gender-affirming care for trans minors. The Republican majority and 3 Democrats supported the measure. In March, Tennessee's governor signed the bill into law, joining 21 other states that have passed similar measures, though some are held up in court.
Gender-affirming care is important. It's critically important because it's truly life-saving.
Dr. Izzy Lowell runs a telehealth practice called QueerMed that works with trans patients across the country.
Puberty blockers and hormone therapy are old medicines. They've been used for transgender people for decades. They've been used for cisgender people much more commonly, much more frequently. With the current laws in place, and if more laws come into effect, we're just risking more and more lives. We're talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of teens who are losing access to care and at very, very high risk for suicide.
The American Civil Liberties Union, along with other organizations, sued Tennessee on behalf of families like the Williams. They argued the law prohibited gender-affirming care, but only when those treatments are provided to transgender patients.
There are a lot of people concerned that society has moved very far, very fast on this issue, and that we need to make sure that kids aren't being hurt as a result.
A federal court later ruled the law could stay in effect, siding with Jonathan Skermetti, Tennessee's Attorney General.
So it's your position that the state and politicians are better equipped to make this decision than a set of parents working with a doctor?
There are all sorts of things that people want to do in the medical community that the state regulates. Various experimental drugs, physician-assisted suicide, regulation of the healthcare industry is something states have been doing for a very long time.
Some of the leading medical organizations in the country have opposed this type of law. American Medical Association, foregoing gender-affirming care can have tragic consequences, including heightened risk of suicide. What's your response to that?
Nobody wants kids to kill themselves, and kids who are dealing with gender dysphoria and other gender-related issues have a really hard time. These are hard issues. These are relatively new issues. There's not a lot of research there.
Every single major medical organization in this country agrees that gender-affirming care is appropriate for minors who meet the diagnosis.
The psychological impact of whether it's gender-affirming care restrictions or the passage of anti-trans legislation is to make children feel like they're under attack, that their family is under attack, and that makes you feel unsafe.
I think it's politics. I think they're trying to get people excited over something that, most folks are confused about.
You say politics, but this is so personal. It's your daughter.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That makes me just so angry that they're, they're not listening to medical experts and, they think that they know better. It's just infuriating.
As for LW, she's already having trouble getting gender-affirming care in Tennessee.
Got to take 2 days off of work to go drive and get her the care that she needs, but that state has a bill in their legislature as well. And my backup state has a bill in their legislature as well. I have like backups to my backups for all of this.
I mean, she's contacted people and, several.
I've contacted a dozen different gender affirming care
in
places.
probably 5 different states.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most of my job is logistics at the moment, trying to help people travel out of banned states. I'm fearful about the lives of my patients.
We've heard a lot of criticism of the laws. This is an area where there is intense disagreement. We resolve that through the democratic process.
In November of 2023, the ACLU asked the Supreme Court to overturn Tennessee's law.
This shouldn't be political. It's definitely scary because if they think that I shouldn't have access to their care, on the far right, there's definitely got to be somebody who thinks I shouldn't exist. I wish that it was a world where, we could just be like, hey, I'm trans, I use these pronouns, and then just like going on with your life and not having that be a big deal.
I say healthy, happy, and not hurting anyone.
Yeah.
That's all I need for my kids to be.
Oh, there's pride flag. Yay, pride flag. Does it ever get old seeing pride flags here? No. No, never. Why don't we go to the homes near the parade route? Yeah?
Oh, the parade route? Like the big pride thing? Mm-hmm. The place, I want to see the architecture is also there.
In November 2022, the Hurley family moved from Texas to Colorado in search of a safe environment for their 15-year-old transgender son, Dallas.
So when we were in Texas, we didn't often see pride flags. When we were in the parade, everybody was on top of these buildings. There were people like hanging off the sides, waving. Everyone was all decked out in pride gear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
It was. Did it make you feel like this was a safe place to be?
Mm-hmm. Definitely much safer than Texas.
Yeah. Like your existence is celebrated here instead of something
prosecuted
that needs to be, legislated, prosecuted.
Texas Supreme Court ruled this morning that the state of Texas can now investigate the parents of transgender children if they seek gender-affirming care.
A ban on gender-affirming medical care for transgender youth went into effect in Texas today, making it the most populous state to date with such a ban.
He's giving high fives now. High five.
So you decide you're going to pick the family up.
Yes.
And for better or worse, flee Texas.
Yes. We consider ourselves political refugees. He was no longer safe in Texas.
Yeah.
We were constantly living under the threat that our children would be taken away from us. And we had to leave because his existence has been politicized. You don't really realize how bad it is until you're out of it and you look back and you see how much energy it was taking up. We couldn't take him into stores. We were afraid that people would realize that he was trans, know him from before, turn us into the state. Like it was not a good way to live.
Dallas, what about you? Do you feel safer here?
Yeah, definitely.
You get to go more places here.
Mm-hmm. I get to go to the stores here now.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're uprooting an entire family, it's not just going to impact the health of that one child. When you lose that support system, the family, the friends that may be around you, maybe they're helping support parents with caregiving. That can create huge burdens on a family.
In September 2022, a Texas judge temporarily stopped investigations into parents who belong to the LGBTQ advocacy group PFLAG, but the Texas Attorney General has appealed. 3 states, including Texas, have introduced bills that would legally categorize gender-affirming care as child abuse. The state of Colorado has emerged as a refuge for families with transgender children. In 2023, Democratic Governor Jared Polis signed a bill ensuring people from out of state can seek gender-affirming care in Colorado without fear of prosecution.
When the SHIELD law passed, what did that mean for you?
I mean, it was kind of like a sigh of relief just to know that we have something in the statute that's going to make sure that people are going to get the care that they need.
Brianna Titone, the first transgender state lawmaker in Colorado, co-sponsored the bill.
Gender-affirming care is life-saving health care.
It's a stark contrast. Colorado is surrounded largely by states that don't have these protections.
That's why it's so important that we are doing the right thing by keeping those services available to people.
Have you seen people come to Colorado because it's a safe haven?
I know of several families that I could think of that have come here for refuge and
picked up their lives and moved.
Yeah. One family was living out of their car.
Better to be homeless in Colorado than to be where they were, because their kid can get the care they need here.
Presumably, it's a really complicated situation right now.
I'm right behind you, bro.
Has Colorado been the sanctuary state you hoped it would be?
Yes and no. It's helpful that politically, legislatively, it's a sanctuary state. So we do have those protections, but there are people out here who are not welcoming and accepting of LGBTQ plus people. By and large, it is a much more welcoming and inclusive. He marched in the Denver Pride Parade, and there were 10 people deep on the sides of the roads cheering him on.
Dallas, what was that experience like?
Amazing. I really liked marching in the Pride Parade.
Mom, was that a great moment for you too?
It was an overwhelming experience to see all those people purposely showing up to let my kid know and other kids like him that he's accepted and loved and safe. It was moving.